Hey everyone, today I'm going to go ahead and continue the series of videos that I've been doing regarding what we can expect to see for free title update number 3 as we are nearing closer and closer to its release, and more importantly, Capcom to officially go ahead and hold some sort of Monster Hunter presentation and provide us more details as to what to fully expect. Earlier in the week, I put out a video talking about Anomaly Investigation, 7-star monsters, and the monsters that we can expect to be added to finally become Anomaly in one way or another. That's not necessarily to mention, of course, the new wave of Risen monsters and other monsters that are set to be added completely brand new to this specific release in Sunbreak. So in this video, I wanted to speak a little bit regarding the second half of what Anomaly Investigations means regarding when it comes to the increased additions of Apex monsters. Remember that for free title update number 1, one of the things that we did end up seeing is that in Anomaly Investigations, pretty much the addition of Apex Arzuros and Apex Rathian were pretty much added into Anomaly Investigations. These are monsters that you can relatively find easily appearing in one of your quests in one way or another. They are not the target monsters. They don't necessarily have any sort of extra drops other than, of course, master rank drops. The typical stuff that you would see from the upgrade from high rank to master rank, but they don't necessarily drop anything new or brand new armor sets or anything like that. So one of the things that people have kind of been expecting is the addition of the rest of the 4 Apex monsters making their way into master rank. This would be, of course, Apex Mizuzune, Apex Rathalos, Apex Diablos, and Apex Cenogre. As we were heading into free title update number 2, the ongoing theory of the time was that people were expecting them to be added, at the very least, Apex Mizuzune and Apex Rathalos to be added in for free title update number 2. And of course, subsequently for the third one, we would presumably get Diablos and Cenogre added in as well. But of course, that never actually took place, that never actually happened. So ultimately what we ended up getting was nothing. No new Apexes appearing. You still only get Apex Arzuros and Apex Rathian appearing in ultimately level 120 Anomaly Investigation quest as a secondary or tertiary monster. I've seen a lot of people post some interesting quests regarding like the target monster being an afflicted Rathian, then Gold Rathian, and then Apex Rathian on top of that. So those are like really interesting to see. But of course, the rest of the monsters haven't necessarily made their way in. Of course, Apex Mizuzune, Rathalos, Diablos, and Cenogre. And as of right now, it doesn't necessarily seem, based on what we have seen in the files, that is actually going to be changing anytime soon. But of course, one of the things that I even made extremely clear in the last video where I spoke about Anomaly Investigation monsters, which by the way, I do want to make a clarification. In that video, I didn't necessarily mention Seething Bazelgeuse as being a tier Anomaly 7 monster. We expect it to be, but it just doesn't necessarily show up. It did show up for tier 6. Of course, that turned out to be normal Bazelgeuse in the same way that Furious Rajang was listed as a tier 6, but of course, it just turned out to be just normal Rajang. In the same way that Furious Rajang now appears to be as a tier Anomaly 7, we would expect there for Seething Bazelgeuse to make that addition, but as of right now, it doesn't show up in the files. Therefore, I didn't necessarily feel like mentioning it because we just don't have any idea if they will be adding it. But of course, logically speaking, it does make sense to be added in on top of the other 5 monsters that I spoke about in that video. So subsequently, any other Apex monster being added in as like a secondary or tertiary monster in the specific type of Anomaly tier quest, we don't necessarily know. That's kind of like at the point where we are right now. Obviously, it makes the most amount of sense. Apex Mizuzune, Apex Rathalos, Apex Diablo, and especially Apex Cenogre were some of the more dangerous versions of Apexes in general. I specifically remember Rathalos being extremely dangerous and Apex Cenogre kind of being the bane of a little bit of like social media. People would just post clips of that thing just going rampage on people and not necessarily them knowing how to deal with it all that well. So obviously we would expect them to appear as Anomaly 7-star, subsequent monsters and stuff like that. But as of right now, we just don't necessarily have any clear answers. But I think this is where things begin to get a little bit interesting because like I spoke about in that Anomaly 7-star investigation video, there is that ongoing theory where people are expecting at the very least to there be 2 waves of additional monsters. The first 5 that we talked about, and then presumably any subsequent additions from free title update number 3 and potentially free title update number 4 making their way into the Anomaly Investigation 7. The same thing can be said for these Apex monsters. If they do end up doing a staggered release, you can end up seeing that at the very least for late November, which presumably we are now expecting it to be on November 23rd for the patch to go ahead and drop. We could potentially see the addition of Apex Mitsuzune and Apex Rathalos being added for that patch. And then on the 4th free title update, we end up seeing the last two being added in as the level cap gets raised, presumably from somewhere to 140 or 150 to 200. That is going to be the ultimate tier for you to be able to go ahead and get your anomaly investigations. So we can end up seeing Apex Diablos and Apex Snogre being added on that second wave, and potentially end up being one of the last additions on top of whatever monsters, like Anomaly Lucent Nargacuga, Anomaly Violet Mitsuzune, and Anomaly the Chaos Gore Magala. That would be the additions that we would expect in that second tier as of right now, as of how things would stand, with then of course Apex Diablos and Apex Snogre end up being those other extra added monsters on top of that for those anomaly investigations. Now still, ultimately, this doesn't change the fact that Apex monsters never really got the one thing that people were expecting them to get, and that would be of course their very own armor sets. That is one of the biggest drawbacks to Apexes in general, that they just simply never end up getting up their very own armor sets, and they basically were like tailor-made for you to be able to have, at the very least on base Monster Hunter Rise, some pretty awesome armor sets. But they never ended up doing that, and now we're seeing that pretty much every brand new monster being added in for Sunbreak gets in some sort of special skill added to their armor sets. So they are kind of making up for it in some way, weird shape or another. But when it came to Apexes, they kind of ended up getting undercut a little bit. And of course, originally they were only ever available for the Rampage. It took a couple of patches for them to be able to become just available in a normal quest, and then eventually make their way through event quests. So it was one of those things where it just took a long while. Also, as I mentioned, event quest, there could be the possibility that you finally end up getting just normal Apexes through a normal quest, not necessarily dependent on anomaly investigation quest, as a secondary or tertiary monster appearing on your random RNG based quest through an event quest, and they finally get their very own separate hunt in the same way that we got them for base Monster Hunter Rise. So that is one way Capcom can finally rectify one of those shortcomings that Apexes still in Master Rank end up having. But that's about all the information that I kind of wanted to go over. A lot of people were asking me still what is going on with the 4 missing Apexes not necessarily appearing, and as of right now, that's where things stand. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya!